Hi everyone, good morning, and welcome to the most special meetup ever in 2 years of Agile Connect Lisbon. Uh, let's talk a bit about Agile Connect to begin with. Kind of present you if you're new to the community or if you never attended one of our meetups. These are the five of us who drive the community in Lisbon. David is not here, Diana, Johnny, me, João, and Nuno over there. I think Nuno is the community veteran. Yeah, you and Johnny are the veterans. We want to start by thanking, of course, Pixels Camp and Bright Pixel for challenging us to do this quite new experiment of having a meetup happen inside Pixels Camp. So thank you, Pixels Camp, for that, and Bright Pixel for sponsoring the event and giving all the facilities we have here. About the community, a bit more about the community. We are a non-profit, so we're not sponsored by any company, and ourselves, we're not sponsored by our own companies, although we are actually using company apparel, but that's maybe a coincidence. We are volunteers. We do this out of our own time, and due to our passion for Agile and for the Agile community, in particular in Lisbon and in general in Portugal, as we have more cities. So for the history, for the community, I'll, of course, give it to the veteran.
Okay, thanks. So it all started in Porto back in 2017. Right, Mike? You probably know the month. It was Jan? No? Most likely, okay. So right now Agile Connect is in 4 cities, so Porto, Lisboa, then Aveiro and Braga, and it has more than 20 volunteers working. Switch here. So regarding Lisbon, the first meetup, Meetup 0, happened in September 2017. We have done since Jan 2018, which is the official kickoff of the Agile Connect Lisbon. We have done more than 26 meetups in 26 different companies, more than 45 speakers, 875 members, still counting, and 817 people, which some of them might be the same, but went to our meetups through these 2 years and a couple of months. So, and apart from those 5 people that you saw in the picture, other 3 volunteers have worked within the team and then left. So 8 people have passed through Agile Connect as volunteers. Back to you, João.
Thanks. One thing worth highlighting, of those 26 companies, 2 are actually bars. So we had some meetups with beer involved. Take that, other meetups. So if you want to get involved in other ways with the community, you can join our Slack community, agileconnect.slack.com. We usually send this thank you email, so in case you are SVPDS on meetup.com for this meetup, you'll get a thank you email with the link, but of course the link is not too hard to get to. And you can sign up to be part of our Slack community and then share anything about Agile that you think you want to share with the community and see what people have shared. In our meetups, usually our talks are recorded. These ones are being recorded as part of the whole Bright Pixels Camp media coverage. But usually we film the talks and we share them on YouTube. So if you're curious about what all these 26 meetups were about, you can just go on YouTube and we have most of the videos online for you to check out. And of course, we are on Facebook. So please go and like us, and you also get kind of notifications there about our next meetups and when we publish the videos for the meetups that happen. The next, sorry, not yet. Another way of giving back to the community is to either propose to give a talk at one of our meetups, or lend us the space at your company for us to host the meetup. So in any of these cases, just reach out however you find fit, either through LinkedIn, the Agile Connect Slack, or through meetup.com, and we'll talk with you to facilitate any of these ways for you to contribute and to help us drive the Agile community in Lisbon. The next regular meetup will be on the 10th of April at Critical Tech Works near Intercampus, and it will be a full meetup workshop called Kanban Pizza Game. So it's, I think it will please any Agile person in at least 3 ways, because it's Kanban, it's pizza, and it's game. But for today, before that next meetup, we have 3 talks, which is not something we usually do. The order is not going to be this one, right? Okay, so we'll have João Miranda first with There is no such thing as human error. Then we'll have Neha Datt with Problem solvers first, make a second. And finally, Mike Sousa with Agile and Olympic athletes. So we'll have 30 minutes each for each talk. They will be in succession, and we'll have the Q&A session at the end. To kind of make this easier, we're going to, and caveat, we're going to try this today, so bear with any hiccups. We're going to use Slido, like this, during the talks, you might be able to put your questions there and vote on the questions, like upvote the questions that people have put there, and in the end, we'll do the Q&A with all the speakers from the questions we see there, and we'll have hopefully a healthy discussion session with all 3 speakers. So, with that being said, let's kick off, and we'll start with João Miranda.
Thank you. Hello everyone. This talk is about human error and how we should look at it from a different perspective. So just a little presentation. I've been in the IT world in a number of roles for the past 18 years. I'm a co-organizer of the DevOps Lisbon Meetup. We also hold monthly meetups, so please join us someday. And I'm also co-organizing the first DevOps Days conference in Portugal. DevOps Days is the original DevOps conference, so it will be held in June. The call for papers is open, so give it a shot. So, what do you think is the favorite journalist question after an accident? What is the main thing that we have to answer? No. Oh, yes, that's a good one. How many Portuguese? It doesn't matter the other ones. So, but a very common one is, well, there's a human error and the accident was blamed and it was caused by a poor human, so that's solved. And for instance, I don't know if you remember a few years back that horrible train crash in Galiza. And the official finding says that that crash was exclusively responsible of the train driver. So the train driver was distracted. He was going too fast. The plane crashed. Lots and lots of people died. And so the problem was the train driver. So remember, if you are traveling in a fast train, you have to really, really trust that train driver, because if he gets distracted in the wrong place, nothing can help you, okay? So the disaster will probably happen again sometime in the future because people get distracted and they aren't robots and they can't be just fully concentrated every second of their work. A few years back, and this is quite common, there are some outages and some of them get on the news, and if you search for those outages in Google or something, most of the time you'll see something like this: human error, Amazon broke the internet with a typo, so that one guy just did something horrible, and if we could just remove that guy, everything would be perfect. So the thing is, for every complex problem, there is always an answer that is clear, it's simple, but it's wrong. And we must remember that at all times. One other example, I really love these things. Also, a couple of years back or something, Knight Capital basically went bankrupt in 30 minutes. They lost $400 million in 30 minutes. And it was such a serious problem that other financial companies had to step in, or that failure could cause a systemic shock in the financial world, at least in the American financial world. And what was the problem?
one of the nice technicians during a deployment did something wrong. And so things just went bonkers. Equifax also, they have info on 800 million consumers. Hackers expose lots of personal data for 140 million users. And, well, the former, and that's important, the former Equifax CEO says that breach boiled down to one person not doing their job. So it's pretty common, and even in our daily life, to when there's a problem, one of the first questions that we have is, who done it? Who done it? But the thing is, it's proven time and again that we cannot just attribute an accident to a single cause or to a single individual. And especially in our world, which is very complex, this is never the case. So, we cannot simply remove humans from the process. They are part of the process, and at least for a few more years, I'd say they are the intelligent part of the system. Okay, not the machines, but humans. So they are needed. They have to be there. They are the ones who solve the problems. And what is a complex domain? So if it's dynamic, it's always changing in a non-linear way. If there's lots of parts and connections between those parts, if there's lots of uncertainty, for instance, we cannot fully understand how the system works because we may have incomplete data, missing information, or too much information, or difficulty to find that information, which causes uncertainty on how the system works. And if there's risk, if we have to consider that one of our actions can have a catastrophic effect, even a small one, and we have to think about that risk, then we are in a complex domain. And basically, IT systems are complex domains always, as you probably agree. So when we are dealing with these complex domains, there are some things that we have to take into account. It's easy for us to get fixated on our initial analysis, and then new data can come up, but we get fixated on that initial analysis, and that make us take more time to solve the problem. It's very difficult for us to deal with exponential developments. If things are moving too fast and they are moving like this and changing like this, we tend to think that things are changing like this. So it's difficult for us to deal with that kind of change. We also, in the middle of a crisis or in the middle of the incident, it's quite common to start discussing before the problem is solved, how should we have prevented that problem and what we have to do after the problem is solved. But we must put that away, and we have to fix the problem first and then discuss all that stuff. It's also very easy for us, especially in the middle of an incident, to, well, there's so many things happening, and we think, well, I have to try this, and this may be the cause, but in the middle of the storm, we can just forget about it, and then afterwards, when the problem is solved, we think about, well, 5 minutes ago, or 10 minutes ago, or 30 minutes ago, I thought that this might be the problem, but then it just went away from our mind. It's also very common to treat interconnected events as independent. So for instance, we deploy something in the user's API, for instance, and that may cause the checkout process to fail. And we don't believe that things are connected. It's very common when we do a deployment, something breaks, and we don't believe that the deployment caused the failure. Because we usually tend to think in causal series, so A causes B, causes C, but the way things happen is not in a series, it's in nets. A causes B, which causes C, which can also cause B, which can cause E, so it's very difficult to understand. And we also have, especially if we are dealing with a system for a bit of time, we can be over-reliant on our experience and ignore what evidence the system is showing us, and we can get fixated, oh, this is the symptom, it must be that problem. The site is slow, it must be the database again. Okay, and we just ignore the evidence that show us that probably that's not the cause. But that's because we are humans and that's the way our mind works, okay? So until a few years ago, and it still happens, there was something that academia says that it's the old view of human error. So basically the systems are safe, humans are the ones who can break things, so we have to put away humans because they are the problem, okay? And in the 19th century, things were quite simple. Some factories came along, and the formatter company came along, and there was a theory that I believe it still has some followers nowadays, which is the scientific method, okay, by Taylor. And Taylorism is a very famous approach to solving things. And I couldn't resist, and I had to put this slide. So Taylor, which was hugely influential in the way we think, said in his landmark book, said, well, one of the very first requirements for a man who is fit to handle pig iron as a regular occupation is that he shall be so stupid and so phlegmatic that he more nearly resembles in his mental makeup the ox than any other type. And this was hugely influential, and when we think in dividing labor and creating silos, which is very common still nowadays, this is influenced by Taylorism. So we can divide tasks, and if we divide the tasks and get humans to do it, they just have to follow a few simple rules, and we don't have to take advantage of the brains that we have. So we have moved on, but we are nearly near where we have to be. Because when things happen, when bad things happen, it's very, very easy to start to point fingers and find scapegoats and solve the problem in that way. But the thing is that we are humans, we are not objective, and we have to be careful, and we have to think things through if we want to prevent them from reoccurring, and if we want to improve. And some things that we have to take into account when you are looking into an accident. So the first one is the hindsight bias. So it's extremely easy once things happened to look back and very easily point out, well, they should have done this and they should have done this. It's obvious that they have done this error. How could that be? But well, that's easy because we have all the data. We know what the problem was. So it's very easy. It's like when I was a child, I don't know if you did that also, but I always started from the end and went backwards, and it was very easy for me to find the way out, okay? And that's what we do when we are analyzing accidents. Very often, we just look back, and it's very easy to see the path, okay? But that's not what the people who are trying to solve things, they don't have that information, okay? There's also the fundamental attribution error, which basically says, when I mess up, the problem is not mine, it's the circumstances, the context. When other people are involved in an accident, well, that's their problem. They are unprofessional, they don't know how to solve stuff, and this is very, very, very common, even if not so explicitly as I'm telling right now, but this is very common. When we are involved in it, we find all kinds of reasons for the things happening the way they happened. when there are other people, especially if they are not working with us and we don't know them very well, it's very easy to say, how can they work like that? And if we really trust in a system, especially if we are involved in building it, and something bad happens, usually it's easier to put blames on people, not on the system, and think, well, the system is perfectly fine, those people have to move, okay? There's also the counterfactuals, which are not very helpful when we are thinking about what went wrong and how can we improve. And this is basically constantly happening. We very, very commonly think when we are looking back, well, if we have done this or that, we could have prevented something. But the issue is when we think in these terms, if we have done something that did not happen, it doesn't explain why people have done what they've done, why people in the middle of the accident chose to do those actions, okay? Because we are talking about something that did not happen, so it doesn't help to move on. And one secondary effect is that counterfactuals, even for ourselves, have a tendency to bring some emotions that are not conducive to improving things. So regret, guilt, and sometimes relief. So, what can we do? First off, we have to think about one principle that is really, really crucial to understand things, and it's the local rationality principle. And basically, unless people have some mischievous intentions, if people want to do good, and they usually do, people do things that make sense to them given their goals, their understanding of the situation, and their focus of attention at that time, okay? They don't do stupid things just because they want to, just because they are unprofessional. No, they do things because it made sense to them given their context, okay? And that their context is very different from ours when we are looking back. So that local decision at the time, we have to have the assumption that it was right, it made sense for them. And we have to understand why it made sense for them. And accidents happen for normal people who are doing normal things. And sometimes things break. But they are doing normal things in their day-to-day life, and sometimes things break. So can we find the cause? Well, we cannot find the cause. And this is very important. When something bad happens, when an accident happens, it's impossible to find the cause. So this is a book, if you are interested in this kind of stuff, this is a wonderful book. It's by Scott Snook, who is, I believe, a military, and he was under friendly fire in Panama. And a few years after, there was an accident in Iraq where some American F-15s shot down a Black Hawk, which is an helicopter, and they were in line of sight. And even then, the F-15s shot down the Black Hawk. And this obviously was very emotional for him because he was also under friendly fire and he wanted to understand what happened. And this is what he came up. So this is the shoot down, and he did a thorough investigation of everything that surrounded that accident. And well, basically he found all these causes, and he ended up in the changing world order and the fall of the Soviet Union. So he went really, really back. And it's very interesting because he writes in the book that he went to that investigation and he wanted to find who were the people responsible for that, what did they had done wrong, and in the end he said no one did anything wrong. So he said this accident happened because or perhaps in spite of everyone behaving just the way we would expect them to behave, just the way theory would predict. And this shutdown was a normal accident in a highly reliable organization. So we don't find the cause ever, because there's no one cause. We just have to stop somewhere, and we have to select the cause that we want to deal with. And this is, I think this is quite profound. If you let this sink in, I think this is quite profound. So there's a new view on human error, which treats human error as a symptom of a failure of the system. So it's not necessarily that human who did something wrong. It's a symptom of the failure of the system. Safety is not built into systems and into our IT systems. And we have to understand things in this way. So the human error is connected to features of people's, tools, tasks, and all the operating environment where the humans are working in. And this is probably, everyone knows this slide. So there are, Ron Westrom says, I don't know with how much scientific accuracy, but it's a nice handle to think about stuff. There are three types of organizations. There's the pathological, the bureaucratic, and the generative. And we want to be preferably over there. Okay? And if we want to be on that generative organization where things are discussed and things are improved, when we are looking at an accident, there are 4 needs that must be fulfilled. And we have to be aware of those 4 needs if we want to do a good job. So there is the epistemological, the preventive, the moral, and the existential. The epistemological is just a fancy word to say we have to establish what happened. Not why necessarily, but what happened. The preventive is the part of the analysis that says, how can we do better next time? The moral is, for instance, if we have, I don't know, doctors. Doctors, they have a code of conduct. There are some norms that they have to follow. And the action must also say, did this person follow the rules or not? Did they follow the good practices of the profession or not? And this is also a very important thing because people want to know this. And there's also the existential. I don't know, if a plane falls, we have to establish, well, is it safe to keep flying with the other planes, or is there a systemic error? Okay, and this is not something that we have to do by ourselves. It's just something that the society demands. Okay, we cannot, if a plane flies, or I don't know, if there's a breach in a bank and money is stolen, people will want to know, can we trust the system or not? So we have to answer that question. And the problem is that most of the time they are in conflict. So the preventive one and the moral and the existential ones, most of the time they are in conflict. Because here there's lots of politics, and then that can prevent people from understanding if what really happened and how can we prevent it. So if we focus mostly on the moral and the existential needs, and if we ignore the other ones, we'll start to create a blame culture, okay? And that blame culture, the fear that we can be punished for something, either it is real or just perceived, it's a terrible thing. Okay, so we have to understand that we have to also answer about moral and existential stuff, but we have to fight to get the epistemological and the preventive stuff first. Okay. because learning from failure, and we so many times fail to learn from failure, okay, it's at least as important as those moral and existential needs, because these ones are most commonly the most the easiest ones to explain, okay, and we just don't learn from failure, and then we are condemned ourselves to repeat the same things. So how can we try to approach this analysis and these accident reports? How can we do this more objectively? So there are 5 steps. The first step is to lay out the sequence of events. So we have to establish a timeline, what people were discussing, and we have to write down that kind of information in the context of that specific accident. So what actions did people do? What decisions did they do? At what times? What kind of behavior did they have? Okay. If the accident unfolded over a long period, it may help to divide it into episodes. Okay, if it's a short one, no need for that. We then have to find out how the world looked. So in our IT systems, we have, for instance, lots of logs, lots of metrics. It's important to gather those metrics to understand how accessible they were, and to understand if they were useful for what was happening or not. So basically, gather all those metrics and all those logs that might help to fully understand the accident. Then we have to couple the first step, what people decide to do, what they did in the timeline, couple with the data that we gathered from the logs, and try to understand what kind of, how people use that data to understand, to make those decisions, to understand which data were they looking for, because even if there's lots of data available, lots of metrics, people don't look for all that metrics. They focus on specific ones. And we have to understand if they use the most useful data or not. Was the most useful data accessible or was not? If they chose to look for the wrong data, why? Because they looked for that metric or for that log for one reason, and we have to try to understand why so that we can improve. And finally, we have to try to get that accident, get all that data from that accident that is specific for that accident, and try to find if there's a pattern that you can use to improve things further in the future. Okay? So this is it. I hope this helps. I hope that you go back to your organization and make it more humane and a bit more resilient. Okay, so thank you. And just a quick notice is, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, Lund University, which is a Swedish university, has a program around this stuff. They have some info available online. It's really, really interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, João. Thank you for a really interesting talk on human factors. If you have any questions, just a reminder, we'll be using Slido to manage our Q&A session at the end with the three speakers. So if you have any questions that you really want to get across, please go to slido.com, and the event code is ACLX for Agile Connect and LX for Lisbon, of course. So ACLX on slido.com to send your questions across and upvote the other questions so that we get them at the end. So without further ado, let's switch to Neha with problem solvers first, make a second.
Thank you. Cool. Can everybody hear me in the back? I mean, it's not a big room, but yeah. Okay, cool. And can you read this in the back as well? All right, awesome. This is a bit of an experiment. It's an experiment within an experiment, I guess. So I've never done like a visual presentation before, so excuse my shitty drawing skills. I'm going to try to walk through this drawing, and I guess this is also within a meetup, within a conference, so we've got 2 levels of experimentation going on today. So my name is Neha. I'm on Twitter as OllyFantasm, if you want to connect. And I'm going to be talking about being problem solvers first, makers second. So what I mean by that is, most of us obviously encounter problems on a daily basis, and many of us are makers. So as a show of hands, do we have any engineers or DevOps, kind of SecOps people here? Yep, okay, cool. Around half, if not most. Anybody who's like a product manager or like a delivery lead or a non-engineer? Cool. So those of us who are non-engineers, we also make things, but the things that we make aren't necessarily code. So for this talk, what I want us to do is just have a bit of a think about a situation. Imagine that we are all makers. We're all, let's say, engineers in a delivery team. And what we make is, like, let's say a recruitment site. It's a website where people can search for jobs, apply for jobs, and hopefully get jobs as well. So our users are going to be job seekers, but we're also going to have people who are advertising jobs as our users. So they're the people with the problems that need to be solved. So in an ideal world, or a version of an ideal world, imagine we've got our users who go to our website. So it's someone who's looking for a job. So they search for their job and they encounter a problem. They're trying to apply for a job, but they find that actually there's so much information they need to enter around their job history, like their education history, every single job they've been on, et cetera, et cetera. That's obviously a real pain point, right? That's a legitimate problem that they're facing. In an ideal world, that person would be able to speak directly to us as makers, and they'd be able to say, hey, listen, it's a real pain that I have to provide so much information. Is there a way that you could maybe just add a CV upload so I can upload my CV, I don't have to enter all these details, and then the person advertising the job can see what my history is, and they can figure out whether I'm an appropriate fit. Makes it much easier for me. I save all this time. And then we as the makers, we'd go, okay, cool. So your problem is you're wasting a lot of time, and the solution that you think that we should follow is to create a system to upload your CV. Now, if we were a true maker, we would ask questions. We'd sort of have our research and our design hats on, and we'd say, well, why do you need to provide a CV? Do you even know whether the job recruiters look at your CV? Maybe they don't look at CVs anymore. Maybe what they do is they look at your LinkedIn profile to see how active you are. Maybe they look at other factors. So how do you know that that's actually going to get you the job that you want? So we'd be able to ask these questions and figure out whether the solution that we've been given is the right solution and whether we really understand the problem that's trying to be solved. And the great thing is, even if we got it wrong, the feedback loops are so tight, we could try something out, send it to the user. They could say, yeah, it doesn't really solve my problem. And we could keep kind of circling through those cycles. But they're really short, quick feedback cycles. That's a version of an ideal world. In reality, most of us don't actually work in that environment. We actually work in an environment more like this. The real world is way more complex, right? What actually happens is we've got our job seeker. They have a problem. They speak to someone from customer support, who then creates a Zendesk ticket, which then goes to someone from maybe analytics, who's doing some analysis on the different types of problems that people have with the site, which then goes to a product manager who says, okay, this is an aspect of the site that actually has a lot of problems for a lot of people. So let's prioritize this area. Which then goes to a BA who says, okay, so this is a solution that came through from the user. So let's write this into a story with all this acceptance criteria and some nice designs for our maker, which is us, to now build. So we've gone through so many different proxies. That problem has been reinterpreted and reinterpreted and reinterpreted so many times. By the time it comes to us, it's something completely different. And it's also a solution. So we, as makers, haven't had a chance to understand the problem and come up with more creative solutions. So something that could have maybe solved the person's problem is just creating a field where the job seeker could have just added the link to their LinkedIn profile, and boom. You just paste the link, so that way the recruiter, they could click on the link, see your LinkedIn profile, get the information they need. No one needs to copy anything, upload any documents, anything like that. But again, we weren't part of that process of exploring the problem. We were just handed a solution that went through a number of different people. So not only does it take a long time for that to come to us, but by the time it comes to us, it's been reinterpreted and it might not necessarily solve the problem. So we get a solution, not a problem, which is not great. The problem doesn't happen in front of us, so we can't even validate whether we've really understood the problem. And to João's point earlier on, there's actually a lot more to the problem. There's not necessarily one root cause. There could be multiple root causes that we don't really understand. And obviously, we can't do everything, right? We're makers. Just because we're makers, it doesn't necessarily mean we're good at asking unbiased questions to get to the root causes. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're good at designing UI to make sure that actually it becomes very intuitive for the job seeker to be able to enter in their details. So this is the real world that we tend to live in. So what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about what it is that we can do, given this is the situation that most of us are in, and there's always things that we can do. So the writing might get a little bit small here. I don't know if you can still read this in the back. So around the point of not necessarily having the right skills in the team. These days, most teams tend to have a product manager or a product owner or a BA, but most teams still seem to be missing researchers, UXers, and designers. So these are core skills that we need that actually really help us do root cause analyses and understand our problem domains a lot better. So even if we don't have these people in our teams, there are things that we can do in order to try to practice some of the skills that these folks tend to master. So there's things like asking unbiased questions and trying to understand what's the difference between an assumption, an opinion, and a fact. So oftentimes, like a user might tell us, look, it takes me ages to fill in this form. That's an opinion. That's not a fact. Because what is a long time for you might be a short time for me. So that's not specific. It doesn't tell us anything about whether it's taking them 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whether it's easy, and how easy is it? Do they need to click 5 times? Do they need to click 2 times? So that's an opinion. And what we need to do as makers, as good makers, is understand what's the assumption that's being made? Can we validate that assumption? What's the opinion? Can we make that more specific so it turns into a fact? And once we have those facts, that's when we actually have things that we can work with to actually design the right solutions and make the right things. So there's 2 main tools that I would recommend here. One is using SMART. Has anybody come across SMART before? Yep. Old, like this is one of those things from the old Prince 2 BA kind of academy world from the 1970s and 80s, which is actually beautiful. It's really simple. It's an acronym that stands for various different things, like there's different versions, but one of them is SMART, one of them is specific, measurable, accurate, relevant, and time-based. So the idea is anytime someone tells you something, see if you can smartify it or make it smarter. So instead of saying we've got product, and let's say we've got marketing, sales, and finance. So imagine these are all 3 different cogs that turn together to create value for the business. Generally what happens is each of these functions tends to work at a different pace. So when we look at technology, tech teams are able to sort of build and deploy code pretty quickly more often than not. So, you know, we've got amazing CI/CD tools, practices, culture in a lot of organizations. So you could theoretically, in many organizations, build and deploy code maybe on an hourly, daily, weekly basis, which is pretty amazing. However, what happens is we build that code, and in a lot of organizations, we then aren't ready to release for at least a couple of weeks or sometimes months, sometimes up to 6 months. So we can only have 6 monthly cycles. And that's because the rest of the business actually works at a completely different pace. So what we've actually done is we've created this situation where we're creating value in one small part of the business, but we haven't looked at the overall big picture. So we aren't actually optimizing for the whole. We've not seen the full picture. We've optimized for one small part of the business. And as you know, as a developer, as someone working in a delivery team, that is one of the most frustrating things. And it also means that we increase our business risk. We increase our technical risk because there's all this code that isn't necessarily being used, but we have to maintain, we have to monitor. And we don't even know if it's going to solve the right problem. So by the time we actually launch, the problem may have shifted or the context may have shifted. So that's a very risky way of working. So one way in which we can try to combat that is we either try to optimize for each of those individual silos to make sure that other parts of the business work at similar rates of pace, or we can try to work as one team. So create like these mini businesses almost, where in your team, you have a member of finance or marketing or sales, whatever's required or whoever's required to be able to push the thing through and measure impact. They're part of your day-to-day team. Another thing we can do as a step of moving towards this direction is to map out the value stream. So who are all of those proxies that are involved in the process of understanding the user's problem, coming through to us, and then going back to the user, and then validating whether their problem was solved. By doing this sort of value stream mapping exercise, we actually understand where sometimes assumptions get made and where the problem or the solution can sometimes be reinterpreted. So having visibility of that is incredibly powerful. And it also means it gives you access to people who you can then bring into your team, into your one team, to engage as part of understanding the problem and prioritizing stuff. Okay, so we've spoken that there's lots of proxies, which obviously causes us a lot of problems. Now, part of this, part of like trying to deal with the fact that we have a lot of proxies is sometimes we can try to create stronger relationships with these proxies, and sometimes we can try to get rid of some of the proxies. More often than not, we're not going to be able to get rid of the proxies. People play a valid role in an organization, and it's important for us to understand the value that they're creating. So what we can do is we can try to see, is it easier to access these people? So in some cases, it might be you take the salesperson out for a coffee, and then maybe they'll be able to take you the next time they go to visit a customer to see the customer. You know, are there things that we can do to make it easier to access the users? So for example, it's hard to know where the users are, like where do you go to find your users? Sometimes they might even be people in your family. So for example, once when I was working on a recruitment website, I found out just by doing a Facebook post that actually I had a couple of friends who'd actually used our site and used similar sites. So I didn't have to do very much at all to find other people who I could actually observe potentially and get some feedback from. There's other things as well that we can do. So even if we can't get access to our end users, it's really powerful to be able to spend some time with customer support. Has anyone sort of done like customer support sessions, you know, as part of their onboarding or like ongoing? Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. In fact, Nuno here, he's organized these customer extreme sessions for our current team where they spend a couple of hours with customer support and with the different markets, and it's amazing what you learn just by hearing what the customers are saying on the phones. And in fact, it's not just what you hear. By working with customer support, you can also ask questions for customer support to ask the users that customer support might not even be aware of, because they might not know how the system actually works. So that can be a really powerful partnership. And the other thing, which we don't do enough of, is doing usability testing and doing site visits. So once you've actually built something, you've deployed it, how do we even know it works? Have we ever watched someone use the thing that we made without actually having the evidence? Again, it's an assumption that what we've done works, and it's an assumption that what we've done works well. So it's really important to validate those assumptions by actually watching people use what we build. And just as out of curiosity, how many people here do any usability testing on the stuff that they build? Yeah, it's actually one of the quickest wins, one of the easiest things to do. You could even get, especially when it comes to standard usability, you could actually get non-experts, so people who aren't, let's say, looking for a job, you could still get them to test your site. So like you could get your partner or your friend to just try to make their way around the website. Okay, so some other things. So we culturally, socially, personally tend to not think about problems first. We actually tend to think about solutions first. And some of the contributing factors are conditioning, our education, the incentives we have in society, and also some of the taboos that we have. So what do I mean by that? I mean that it's quite often, for example, for us to hear from senior managers, I want solutions, not problems, right? That's something that gets heard in all sorts of organizations. Another thing that we also hear is when someone comes up with an idea, or if you come up with an idea, right, and you share it with a colleague, when someone says, oh, that's a great idea, it feels good, right? We get like a little bit of a rush. It like hits our ego. So there's like this natural response that we have to coming up with good ideas. We are naturally inclined to be creative, and we like building things. We like coming up with ideas. But all this does is it reinforces that bias that we have. So it makes it sometimes harder to actually not focus on the idea, not focus on the solution, and focus on the problem instead. And there's this saying in English, oh, he's a real ideas man. I don't know if that's a saying in Portugal at all. It's like an incredibly positive thing. It means that, oh, this person comes up with lots of ideas, really creative. It's a really positive thing. I would argue if you were to switch that and say, he's a real problems man, that wouldn't exactly be seen in the same positive light. So I think the word problem probably has a little bit of a PR exercise to do. You know, we think the problems are bad, but actually they're incredibly powerful and they're really important to understand. And like a personal example that we have going on at the moment is around Brexit. So in the media, we're hearing a lot about politicians who initially said, yes, we should Brexit. Then they're saying, no, we shouldn't Brexit. Then they're saying, yes, we should Brexit. And then, no, we shouldn't Brexit. And having worked in government, I know it's, first of all, politics is politics, right? But having worked in government, there's actually a natural there's incentives that stop politicians from actually changing their position based on evidence. So there are a number of examples where we've run experiments in government labs and we've said, look, this was your policy idea, here's the evidence, and here's what we've run with other variations of the policy, and here are the actual outcomes. What do you think we should do? And the answer is pretty clear. But the politicians know that if they change their mind, they are going to be lambasted in the press. Everyone's going to say, oh, they're flip-flopping, they have no idea what they want to do, there's no clear sense of direction. And even when senior leaders change their mind, we go, oh, poor leadership, really weak. So there's something also about how we set up the incentives and the taboos that actually make it very difficult for people to be focused on problems and change their position based on what they learn. So tying in with that is this concept that we're not really all that comfortable with failure. Again, there's a lot of bad messaging we get around failure. Even the word failure, it's very negative. And what I would do is I would suggest that we rebrand failure just like we rebrand problems. Oh my God, I love this song. Is it Star Wars? No, Jurassic Park. Sorry. Okay, coming back to this. I would suggest that what we do is we rebrand failure. And what we do is we say there's two types of failure. There's good failure and there's bad failure. So good failure is when you make a mistake once, but you learn from it. And then you make sure that that double loop learning happens and you don't make the same mistake again. Bad failure, however, happens again and again and again. So there's no systemic learning. And it's very costly. So if we recognize the difference between good and bad failure, we can actually treat it in a different way as well. We can celebrate when we've had good failure. If someone in the team makes a mistake or we experience failure and we share that openly and we share how we avoided it the next time, that's giving an incentive. That's actually showing that it's okay to talk about failure, and in fact, we embrace good failure. However, again, we don't really do that quite so much. Then the other thing is around learning and how we kind of treat problems. So again, João spoke a little bit about like sort of doing analysis and trying to understand the causes for things. There are some really cool tools like the 5 whys, which have been used for root cause analysis. And I think we saw that causal, I can't remember the term that you used. It was like a causal tree or it was like a series of number of sort of root causes basically, not just a single thing. It's like a causal net, of contributing factors that result in the problem. So we get a much better idea of that when we use tools like the 5 why or fishbone diagrams. We can also do things like applying the concepts of TDD to the problem. So test-driven development is all about you write your test first, it fails. You write your code and you keep writing and testing until your test passes. We could do the same thing with problems. So we could actually write what success looks like, write our acceptance criteria, not from an implementation perspective, from behavioral perspective, and then write the code, or then come up with the idea of the solution and see if that actually validates against the success criteria. Now, another way to do that would be to practice something called BDD, behavioral driven development, but you can apply this concept at various levels of the problem. And it's incredibly powerful because in actual fact, you're getting the person who can confirm whether or not something is a success to actually validate what you've done before you've even written a single line of code. Then the other thing is to kind of apply more of a hypothesis based kind of a hypothesis-driven approach to development. So there's things like you can take on bets or experiments. And I'm not going to go too much into this because there's amazing stuff on the internet around this, but there's a gentleman called John Cutler on Twitter, and ThoughtWorks as well have posted a lot of stuff around hypothesis-based development. I would highly recommend following them, reading up on some of these articles if you haven't already, and trying some of these out in your teams. Now, one of the other factors around why we're not comfortable with failure and learning is that there's always a bit of discomfort around having an idea and then someone either saying that was actually kind of shit, or watching someone use what you just built and seeing that they're really struggling with it. It affects our ego, it really does, and it's important for us to recognize that. There's nothing wrong with feeling uncomfortable around failure. It's actually really important to recognize that, because if you don't recognize that, we're not going to be able to move past it. So sometimes in retrospectives or after usability tests, sometimes in teams, what we do is we actually talk about how uncomfortable we felt with what we just learned. And then once we accept that, we can actually move on and focus on the next thing. And then the last thing, which we kind of touched on upon a little bit earlier, was that we actually like learning and we like being creative and making things. There's actually a whole bunch of hormones we tend to release when we're in flow. There's endorphins, there's dopamine, and there's various other ones I can't even pronounce. And it results in a sense of well-being. It increases our creativity. So we have to embrace the fact that being a maker is actually good for us. It's almost like we're biologically wired to be makers, to be productive. But again, it doesn't mean that we have to be a maker at the expense of being a problem solver. We can understand the problem and then focus on the making. So, in summary, there's a whole bunch of tools and techniques that we can use in the real world in order to deal with the complexity of the situations that we all work and live in. And hopefully you'll be able to use some of these if you haven't used them before. And hopefully they'll help you become stronger problem solvers and even stronger makers as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. That was a refreshing view on how makers also need to be problem-oriented. Again, if you have any questions, we have already some of them coming along here for the Q&A at the end. So questions, please take your smartphones and point your browser to slido.com. Event code is ACLX for Agile Connect and LX for Lisbon. And you can either add questions there or upvote the ones you see there to kind of guide the Q&A process at the end. And for the next talk, we're going to have Mike Sousa, who's just getting ready. Right, here is from Mike.
Thank you. Welcome. So Olympic athletes are an elite of human beings that they almost seem to have superpowers. I'm going to show you what an athlete, Olympic athlete, is made of. And first, I would like to thank Pixels Camp for the organization we have here and to Agile Connect for the invite for talking here. I love Agile. I don't hate project management. My journey on Agile started around 10 years ago. It was when I first found, I started with Scrum, and the Kanban board was really cool when I started using it. Initially, I thought, oh, this is cool. I pick up some rules. There are some books and some papers, and I just apply this, and it's really cool. And then I found out I was wrong. So there's much more about doing Agile and then being Agile. So this is what I'm going to talk a little bit here. I'm an Agile coach. I'm also the team lead of the Agile coaches in Kununu. And I really, really love what I do. So, Olympic athletes, they're not different from you and you and you and me. We're all made of the same. But the question is, if we're all made the same, why aren't we all Olympic athletes? Why some can do things in a way that others can't? If you do some research on the internet, you will find that they all point to the same thing, the mindset. The mindset of an Olympic athlete is the mindset of a champion. We can learn a lot from this mindset they have, and this is what I'm going to talk about. It's not an easy road. It's not something that you will apply once and it's done. You will have to create habits. You will have to shape your mind, and this will help you on your mindset. I read an interesting thing this week that said that minds and parachutes, they work better when they're open. So unless you have an open mind, you will not be able to become an Olympic athlete. Okay, but I'm talking about Olympic athletes, and this was supposed to be a talk about Agile, right? Yeah, but both mindsets, they are quite similar, and that is what I'm gonna try and show you. So from the research I did, Olympic athletes will train every day in whatever conditions needed. They will feel pain from training so much, and then on the next day, they will go and train again. They will go against all and everyone, facing many times financial problems. Not all are professionals. They have other things in life they do, and at the end of the day, they go and train again. And they have personal challenges. But they don't quit from following the dream they have. When we talk about passion, it's the thing when we wake up in the morning and we need to go to work, but we don't feel like, oh, I need to go to work. It's like, oh, cool, I'm gonna go to work. That's passion. Or when you're talking to your family or your friends, they're explaining what you do in your work and the role you have, and you feel proud about the things you're saying, that's passion too. The passion, so in life in a general way, you need an energy source that keeps you driving forward, and passion is that energy. It's really cool when you feel it. Passion will probably help you a lot, driving you in the direction of success. Change. So Olympic athletes, they will accept change as part of the work they have. They practice, they prepare for something, and then in the next season, some rules come, new ones, so they need to readapt to that. There are new teammates in their team. When you work in a team, when you work solo, sometimes you have a new coach with new techniques. There are new equipments. There are lots and lots of challenges that they have to face. Life will never be the same every day. That's something that we like to think because it's comfortable. It's something that we got from our ancestors in the very, very early stages of humankind. If you would be safe and if you would be surviving, you shouldn't change. That was something that we felt. Nowadays is exactly the opposite. Unless you embrace change and you accept that things will change every time, you will not have success. One of the examples for engineering, and not only, but you sometimes in school learn a language, then you know how to work in that language really well. You go to a company, and in a couple of years, there's a better language. Or your language or framework you use, they have a new version, and the new version brings new thing, and you can't keep on working and being the same. So embrace change is something really, really relevant. And then focus. Olympic athletes are able to focus in their daily work. That will bring them their best. And this is what drives them to win. They will focus on every detail of what they do. They will practice, and then on the competition, they will focus on doing everything that they trained for. Neha was talking a little bit about that. So, do you know when you're doing something that you forget that the rest of the world exists and that it seems that time stopped? Some people call it the flow or being in the zone. Ayrton Senna used to call it the tunnel. it's when you're really focused doing something that you feel passionate about, everything else doesn't matter. But it's in those moments when you can actually do your best. In work or in life in general, there's a lot of distractions. Not all of us are able to focus in the same conditions. For people, some people is noise. For others, is people moving around. For some others, it's even light changes. You need to figure it out. What are the things that unfocus you? And try to get good, focused, quality time for when you're doing your work. Some people like to put headphones with music. Some others like to go to a place without people and no noise. So find yours and then apply it, like your focus mode. Olympic athletes, they tend to define short-term and long-term objectives. Sometimes their main objective is going to the Olympic Games, which can be in 4 years. That's not their only goal. They have other goals. They will go to other competitions. They will have daily goals to be able to train best, to be able to be in their best shape. They will use that to keep their motivation levels high. One interesting thing about goals is that, well, the word mindset means mind, so everything kind of relates with mind, with your mind. The mindset, when you think about goals, when they're defined and you know they are relevant, they have two big advantages. One is that you will go faster. Whenever you know you're going in the right direction, all your mind is able to not hesitate so much, and you just go. The other good advantage is that whenever you have two things you need to do, and you're quite not sure which one you should do first, because priorities are very hard to define, it's easier. It's the one that makes you go closer to the goal. Doesn't mean that you're not going to do the second one. It just means that you now know which one you should do first. Nowadays, for defining goals, both in personal life or in company, it's the OKRs, objective and key results. Some companies are starting to use them. We are also start to use them in our company. We're starting, so not sure if they help or not. For now they are, but still in the beginning. Having the goal and knowing that you're getting closer to it will give you more motivation, and it will make you be able to focus more, use your passion to get closer, and that will also allow you to grow. Don't be afraid to aim high for your goals. If you put a goal that you already know 100% that you're going to do it, maybe that's not actually a goal, you're just being sure. I'm going to talk also about failure, so aiming high is not a problem. Olympic athletes, they face their fears in the eyes. They don't run away from it, but they run with it. Fears make them perform even better. The adrenaline pumping in their veins, making them to do even stronger and better than before. And whenever they fail, they use it to learn, to grow, and improve their results. Whenever an athlete gets injured, he doesn't quit, he gets up and he becomes stronger than before. So, fear is something that we have. We can't run away from it. All of us, or almost all of us, we are born with it. The difference is that you either let fear block you and you stop doing whatever because you're afraid, or you learn how to deal with fear. Fear is actually a good thing. So the adrenaline that is in your veins when you get fear, they will increase the quality of your senses. You'll hear better, see better, hear better, move faster. You can't always be in this state, then you lose the effect, but whenever it gets, it's really cool. One interesting thing is that fear can be a good alert point. So whenever you're feeling fear, it's because probably you're going to do something important. You normally don't fear fear if you go to eat to a restaurant. It's a normal thing. But if you have to come to stage or do a presentation in your company and you know the CEO will be there, all those things, you get a little bit scared. So it's good. You know it's important. Don't let the fear block you, but be sure to be aware of that. I can tell you that probably the most important decisions I took in my life, I was really scared. I do remember when I asked my wife to marry me, I was really scared. Don't know why now, but at the time I was. So it was probably something really important. And the last couple of times I changed work, although I love the company I was working at, and even so I decided to move to a new challenge, I was scared about that. So it was for sure something important. And then there's the question of failing. Fail environment, fail and grow with it, blah, blah, blah. That's something you hear, and it's something that it's good to see that the word failure is start to lose the negative connotation and starts to be seen as, I'm not going to say positive, but something that you can accept. Yes, if you fail all the time, there's something wrong, you should fix it, but you fail once, you fix it and then you do it better, it's even great. Of course that you should have a plan B. If you're going to do a jump you never did in your life, use a safe net. Don't do it in a crazy way. But don't be afraid to do it. Athletes, they are not afraid to do it. Athletes, they dare to think in different ways. They will find ways to do what they're doing in a better way. And they never say it can't be done. So the idea about thinking differently, and this applies to everybody, but in athletes, sometimes they'll start doing something nobody did and nobody had the courage to do, and then suddenly they actually are doing something so cool that everybody now is following them. That's what you should engrave in your mindset. You should think outside of the box, or inside of the box if everybody is outside, because if everybody thinks outside, you're not thinking differently. And whatever way you think will impact the final result. There was a study saying that if you think positively and optimistic people, they think 31% smarter than when the same people think in a negative way. So being optimist is also really cool. And then it's perception. Whatever perception you have of things, they will influence the opportunities you have and the results. So I don't know what you're reading there, but actually there are two things written there. So depending the one you see and how much you open your mind to things that you didn't thought that were there, they can actually open doors to opportunities that you didn't thought before. And then athletes, they never do just enough to achieve things. They go the extra mile. They do that little bit extra that make us look at them and think that's my idol. I would love to be like that person. So they're always looking to go to the next level. Sometimes, in this case, it was a 20-year 8 record that was not beaten. You would probably start thinking it's not possible to be done. In many cases, athletes, they beat their own world records. So they've done it really good, and then they take it one notch up. It is important to keep learning, especially in nowadays. I'm 100% sure about this. None of us are able to pick up what we know today and say, I'm going to live 10 more years, I will not need to learn anything else. Every day there's a new thing, a new version of the app we use, a new tool, a new whatever that we need, a new gadget that we need to. Another important thing on the extra mile is from time to time we should stop and look a little bit back and understand, am I doing well? can I do better? It's the retrospective kind of thing, but it's really, really relevant. I have no clue about time. Okay, so I can go back on slides. I thought it was less, so. Okay, we'll have more time for questions. So I was talking about Agile mindset. Was I talking about Olympic athletes mindset? Actually, I was talking about both and the same. They are quite similar. I like sport. My daughter do gymnastics, so I tend to get a little bit more involved. And then it was when I realized that actually Olympic athletes, they have a cool mindset. And it's pretty much an agile mindset. Someone was saying on the other day that this is just rebranded, right? The agile mindset is not new. It exists everywhere. It is just being applied now to the concept of work, mainly for software engineering development, but actually not only. Schools are applying it in the way they teach. I apply it at home. I know lots and lots of people that apply these kind of things at home with their kids, with their families. And it's not only going to the refrigerator and putting the post-it about who is going to put the garbage out. It's actually about the way you think. It's picking up a concept, a problem, and not focus on the solution, because I can't focus on the solution if I didn't focus properly on the problem. Then I will probably solve something that was not what the problem was. So the mindset, if well applied, it's not about techniques. It's not about doing the daily scrum in front of the board with your team, answering 3 questions or just going through the work you're doing. It's about the way you face things and the way that you put yourself to solve challenges in life in a general way. So the mindsets, they're quite identical. I dare to call it an Olympic agile mindset. So one important thing is that you can almost practice all of those. Passion, not really. So if you don't feel passion for what you do, maybe you should consider changing. So maybe that's not where you are. But when you do things with passion, when you really feel and believe in what you do, when you accept that there are going to be things changing, and that doesn't mean the end of the world. I was a project manager. Today I love Agile. For me it was kind of a natural path. Doesn't mean to be for everyone, but change will exist. Focus, it's when you're in the focus zone. It's when you're really focused in what you do that you deliver your best, and you can put all the passion you have in the things you do. Be sure that you have goals. Don't go just like, if you put a boat in the ocean and you don't give it a direction, it will just go around, eventually can go against some rocks, or can even go to the destination. It's also possible, but it's different when the boat actually knows where it needs to go. Sometimes you have to diverge from the direction that you want because there's an obstacle. Be sure to realign to where you want to go. That will help you get there better and faster. Don't be afraid to fail. Fear is something that will happen. Get out of your comfort zone. It's scary, but it's also addicting. Once you go out of your comfort zone, your comfort zone actually will grow a little bit, and then you will start to feel even more comfortable. Big companies and people and Olympic athletes, they don't do magic inside their comfort zone. They do it when they go outside their comfort zone. So you should also dare to do it. Be sure that if you fail, you learn from it. But also be sure that if the failure can make a company go bankrupt or something really, really high, be sure to have a safe net don't jump just with your eyes closed if you don't know where you're jumping to, but don't be afraid to prepare for jumping. And you need to dare to think differently. Just think the same way that everybody else thinks will probably get you to the same results they got. So try to see things with your open mind. Doesn't mean that then you have to accept whatever people are telling you, but if you accept with open mind, you will hear it, and then you can take a decision on, does this make sense to me, to my current situation? And if not, you can move away from it. And then you need to go the extra mile. Don't do things in half or because it's just enough. Yes, sometimes we don't have time and we can't go and do everything just perfectly. True. And I'm not saying that going the extra mile is doing things super perfect. It means that if you know you can do it a little bit better, try to do it. Okay? And if you practice, if you dare to go in this journey, as I said, it's hard. It requires you to create habits and to prepare and train for it a lot. But maybe at the end, when you go this way, maybe you're ready to be an Olympic agile athlete. Thank you. Time for Q&A?
Well, thank you, Mike, for your interesting talk. So ideally, if you repeat your cycle 26 times, you run a marathon because you go the extra mile 26 times. So I would invite all the speakers to now go back to the stage. Come here, don't be shy. You're the lead stars. You should be here. I'll take the corner. All right, so let's start going through some questions that arrived on Slido. Where is it? And yeah, in the meantime, if you still want to bring more questions forward on Slido, cool. And if at the end we have some time, we can like just do a call out if you have any other questions that you didn't put through here. So first, let's start with a question for João. And someone asked, can data bias people or be the indirect cause of the error? How can we prevent those kinds of errors? If you want to check the question here. It's the first one.
I believe that, as I think I've mentioned in the talk, that we have to couple both things. Just because we have data, it doesn't mean that it has meaning. So we have always to couple that data with the human side of the story. Okay, so it's sometimes it can, I'm not sure if I understood the question, but sometimes people just focus on the data, and as at least here in Portugal, it's very common, especially in politics, to say that we can beat the numbers to say whatever we want. Basically, that's data. So we cannot just look at the data and assume that it's the end and be all of everything. We apply meaning to the data, so we have to couple the human human side always. Okay.
Do you, any of you, Neha or Mike, want to add anything about this question as well?
I totally agree with what you just said. And I think so sometimes researchers kind of describe it as data versus insight versus information. So like you take the data and you add insights around it to get information. So we can take something that's quantitative. We need to provide qualitative insights around it to provide the meaning behind what that data actually represents. And that's when we get information. And that's where I think sometimes teams tend to focus just on the qualitative or just on the quantitative, but they both have to work together to actually turn that into information.
Precisely. Yeah. That's right.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the kind of divide between being data-driven and data-informed, right? Okay, so the next one is for you, Neha, which is, problem has a lot of negative, catastrophic charge on a lot of cultures. Should we agree to call it instead opportunity?
Do you know what? Maybe that is what we need to do. Maybe we need to call them opportunities. Because so in my head, I kind of see. So I see problems as being when you have a need that isn't met. So let's say I'm hungry. I have a need. I need to eat food. That need isn't being met, so I'm hungry. That's a problem. That's also an opportunity to eat. So I think opportunities are maybe the flip side of a problem, but sometimes you can have an opportunity that exists where there's no problem. So iPhones, I think, are a classic example. Smartphones. They didn't come out of a problem space as such. They met a need that we didn't even realize that we kind of had. We have a need for convenience, right? But it's not like we felt inconvenienced because we were used to the level of inconvenience of having to call someone on a landline phone or book appointments weeks in advance. But when that need was met in a different way, we kind of then started to realize that actually this was an opportunity that was exploited. So maybe we always had the need, but it wasn't such a strong need. So yeah, like maybe we should call them opportunities. There's certainly, opportunities are definitely a lot more positively focused than problems. I don't know if either of you have views.
I think that there's always, regarding failure, for instance, I work at a bank, and by regulation and compliance, we have to report when we have a relevant incident or a critical incident. And we have to report this for the Bank of Portugal, ECB, whatever. And sometimes the words that are used in these regulations are very against failure, and failure is a bad thing. So sometimes it's difficult to change, to give new meaning to words when the context around you that you really cannot control forces you to use those terms. So I think for me it's quite interesting how in my day job how we can make these things work. So how can we talk about incidents and focus more on the epistemological and preventive sides and not on the moral and existential sides, because basically when we are talking and we have to talk about relevant incidents or critical incidents, at least the way I see it, I believe that formally that's not the first intention, but the way I see it, and I think that the way most people see it, when we are creating those reports, those formal reports, we are answering or fulfilling those moral and existential needs and not the other ones. And how can I get my teams to talk about failure without that negative charge? It's really hard. Maybe opportunity is a good term, maybe.
I think actually what you said, though, also raised a thought for me, which is that why are we not okay with things that are negative and things that are bad? Like, why is it that we feel like we always need to put a positive spin on everything? Like, shouldn't we actually be able to accept the good and the bad? So, like, maybe what we actually need to challenge is this thing that we try to avoid pain. And I know it's an evolutionary thing that you certainly mentioned in your talk as well, our evolutionary trait to try to avoid pain. But actually, there's probably a level of acceptance and embracing of the pain that we need to have as well in order to have, like, a more balanced mindset, maybe.
And Mike, how do you think this fits, for instance, with the Agile Olympic athlete mindset? Do you think the Olympic athlete mindset should be more about chasing opportunities than running towards problems?
Yeah. The things that we're talking about, the negative, this is coming from evolution, but it also comes from school. We learn from school that if you fail and you have a bad grade, you take it home for your parents to sign it, so that you have to study more instead of teaching you that you failed. It's okay, as long as in the next test you do or exam, you do it better. And this is the mindset that we don't have, and then we drag it along our companies, our lives, and then unfortunately we drag it to the next generation. For Olympic athletes or in what relates to mindset, you should be problem focused. So it's human mind. I start talking about the problem and you go immediately start implementing it. I didn't finish telling you what I need to do, but you're already fixing it. Your mind is doing it. So it's something we need to practice about not going to the solution before I fully understand the problem, which I do think that then creates the opportunity, the challenge, and it puts your mind in a best position for them to be focused. Olympic athletes, for sure, they always see a problem as an opportunity to do better and to eventually go over the other ones and be better and better, or themselves, because most of the times they don't run against the others, they run against themselves.
Right, and that segues nicely into the one question that just came up for you, Mike, which is yeah, actually I have two for you. They're both at 1UP vote, so I'll go for the earliest one. How can we encourage people and teams to have / adopt a more Olympic mindset in our workplaces?
Interesting. So it needs to be bottom up and top down, which is hard. So first, it means that the teams, they must want to be Olympic. And sometimes you mix these with pressure of working overtime, work smarter. There's a lot of ways to look at this. The reality is that if a team doesn't want to excel and be better, they will not be motivated. So first we need to create this motivation for them to be. And motivation can be intrinsic or extrinsic. Yes, the company can pay them more if they do better. That's not the way to go. It's internal motivation. Whenever they feel better and understand that I'm able to do good, make them grow, they will probably get addicted and want more. The second part is top-down. You need management to create the right environment for this to happen. A very, very simple example, failing. If someone fails and the message you pass is, oh, they failed, it's bad, blah, 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 you're not giving space for people to fail. So that's the mindset that needs to be on the company. And it was interesting because you mentioned that having like in one group of the company this working doesn't fit. So this needs to be 360 all over the company. So for this to work in a company, for me, it's something you need to start in different speed probably, but you need to start planting the seeds in the entire company and give it time to grow, because it's not going to happen from night to day. It needs time.
I just want to add one thing. I think that from the top-down perspective, it's very important to have a clear vision where you want to go. Then you have to let people sort it out, but they need to understand where do we want to go as an organization. And I think that at least in my experience, well, if you have a high-performing team already, it's done. But when you don't have that, it's a new team or something, you have to set high standards. Not too high, as they may seem completely impossible, that can demotivate people, but you have to set high standards. And when people reach some goals, you have to get them to think in new goals immediately after. So, because these guys, they are always pushing themselves and they don't stop when they reach a level, they don't stop. They have to have new goals, and you have to ensure that your team always has new goals. And when they get to some level, you have to make them believe that then they can go higher.
I think you're doing this on purpose, because that you said just segues really nicely to the other question we had stemming from Mike's talk, which is exactly about like high performance. Just bear with me. All right, it was like this: not going the extra mile doesn't mean half-assed. Shouldn't we discourage heroics because they create unreasonable expectations, asymmetry, and unsustainable pace?
So, going the extra mile is interesting. On Wednesday, I was in our offices in Vienna, and actually we're talking in a different context about the extra mile. And I do remember one of the team leads saying, "Oh, come on, we're not going to have people working extra time again, right?" And the question is, yes. So, the extra mile doesn't mean that you have to do everything perfectly. Doesn't mean that you have to be working overtime in the example that the team lead was giving. For me, and what I mean here with the extra mile is when an athlete already won the golden medal, he doesn't need to win another one because he already has his objective. Nevertheless, if they know they're able to get the world record, they will to have it. So they will not just say, "Oh, I'm 2 seconds ahead of the next one, I can relax." They will only stop after the finish line because they want to give 100% of them. This doesn't mean that having the extra mile, and yes, it can be misleading, it means that they have to do, I don't know, everything perfect and never fail. That's not the thing. The extra mile is, I will give always 100% of what I'm able to do. And I'm sure that if you see sports, you will see sometimes, and this you see a lot in cycling, if the guy or the girl is like 10 seconds or 20 or 1 minute or 2 ahead of, they will get to the finish line, they will put, they close the jacket because of sponsors, they will go slowly, no hands on the bike going, "I win." So that's okay, because they're not trying to beat any record. But when you see them arriving all together at the same time, giving 100%, when the difference is less than one bicycle distance, when they finish and they need to go to the photo finish because you can't understand who finished, it's much more intense. And that's the kind of extra mile, is when you know that if I wouldn't have give 100%, if it would be 99.9, I would have been second. Or as someone says, the first of the losers. So for me, the extra mile is this, is knowing that I gave everything. And in some of the examples you gave, probably if those would give their extra mile, some accidents wouldn't have happened, although, as you said, the problem was not that specific moment. That moment was just when everything popped up and it happened. So for me, that's the extra mile. Not unrealistic goals, or is inside you, you know you gave everything.
My interpretation of the extra mile is not necessarily doing heroics. I hate heroics. It just causes problems, basically. At least in the medium long term, it just causes problems, and we are just digging a deeper hole. When I think about the extra mile, I think about gently exceeding the expectations of what people think about you and what you think about yourself. So if people are asking for something, find a way to do just a bit more and be creative about it. It just isn't working hard as hell and just burn out. That's not the extra mile in my vision.
I think for me, like my psychology 101 hat on, to maybe play back what I'm hearing, it sounds like maybe the extra mile is more about being intrinsically motivated and trying to achieve something based on what you believe for yourself and what you want. Whereas the example of like being asked to work weekends, for example, that's exploitation. And heroics, being like, a hero, that's actually more about driving your own sense of value based on how other people will see you and how productive you are. And that's not being intrinsically driven. That's being driven by other people's perception of you and your level of productivity. So that's a completely different side of motivator.
Yeah, I think there's also some relativity to the extra mile, because it's extra to what? So it depends on what's your base run length. Because if you're regularly a marathon runner, giving the extra mile is running 4% more. It's not working double. So yeah, I think if on Slido we don't have any more questions, I think we can allow for one more question from the audience if there is any. Otherwise, I think you all look hungry. Who can?
Sorry, we have some merch.
Some what?
We have some merchandise.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I'll pass to Nuno for that part. Okay. Yeah. So there's some merchandise over there that you can grab. I already have one, but of course my kid took it over from me. Ah. All right, so thank you all. Thank you for this really interesting session. Thank you for getting the questions across. We hope you enjoyed all the talks and all the discussion here. We also hope as an organization that you enjoyed this slightly different format. And hope to see you at one of our upcoming meetups, either attending or proposing to give a talk there, as you wish. Thank you all.